going on, world? Welcome to yet another episode of the Tech in Motion podcast, where we interview technology professionals, tech business owners to get them to give us the game, give us some aspiring entrepreneurs the chance to get some insights, some how to's on how to leverage technology in businesses and help fuel success in business, right? And I'm excited today to have my friend Blake Otto here today. And he has been somebody that I came across in some previous employment opportunities that I had before as a consultant, and I enjoyed working with him. And so I'm glad to have him on today. He is a technology advisor with a lot of experience in the IT field. He's the owner of Focus Systems, where they provide business objective focused automations and revenue generating IT solutions for small and mid-sized businesses. And again, I'm so glad that he's taken the time to drop in on us so that he can help other small, mid-sized business entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs leverage technology in their own businesses. So without further ado, welcome, Blake. Glad to have you on, man.
Yeah, good to be here, Will. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was just thinking back to just our initial, how we met. Just I was a consultant on the GRC side. You were on the senior, you were basically a senior IT provider and consultant for one of the firms that we were one of the companies we were supporting. But I want to introduce you and have you share your journey to how you went from like, hey, like I don't know if this is something that you were always a techie growing up and kind of taking apart VCRs and dishwashers and computers when they're coming out, but I don't know what your journey was. So I want you to help me understand kind of how you got to where you are today, to where you're a business owner, technology advisor, at the level that you're at. Can you just share a little bit of your journey, how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, how much time do we got, Will?
Hey, as much time as you want to take, man.
Yeah, so I was one of those guys that came out of high school and was committed to getting a business degree. I wasn't going to be one of those statistics that changed their major, right? So I
Yep.
did the whole thing. I went to college as a business major, and after about a year, I decided that's not really for me. My buddy at the time, my roommate, got a job opportunity from Google and said I should check it out. And I said, "There's no way, man, right?" And he's like, "No, check out this Craigslist job posting. Google's looking for people." And I'm like, Google doesn't post on Craigslist. But this was a decade ago and anything can happen on the internet.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I signed up, and a week later I had tickets out to Miami for a week-long training. And um, I'm like, wow, this IT thing is pretty cool. I never really considered IT before outside of video games or whatever it may be. So did that. It was a short stint with them, introducing Chromebooks to market.
Okay.
So
Oh,
after that, and the people I got to know along the way, I found an opportunity with Dell Computers and did a stint with them. And now I'm really starting to fall in love with technology early on in my life and wanted to make a career out of it. So went back to college, and initially, back in the day when I was going for that business degree, I didn't get great grades because I didn't find my passion. And I was lucky enough to find that passion and go back, do very well in college because it didn't felt like homework. It didn't feel like homework, right? It just felt natural.
that part. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it didn't feel like homework. I just loving what I was doing, and was lucky enough to have a long career in IT consulting, and fell in love with the world of Microsoft. And that journey took me on to you know where I'm at today. So interesting situation. Oh, one part I forgot that was a big part of your life and my life is the military. So early on, I during my IT degree, I wanted to serve. There were some events happening in the country that really resonated with me,
Yeah.
and I wanted to get involved and help, and that was the best way I knew how. So I joined and recently left as a sergeant in the Army National Guard for Wisconsin, and was doing IT related functions in the National Guard as well. So kind of all tied together, and I met some really really great people that I'm lucky enough to still be in my life. So
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And number one, thank you for your service. And
thank you.
like it's so, I guess it's not even funny anymore, but it's just there's so many different pathways, and everybody's journey is so unique that like you can start off doing one thing and then kind of shift over into something else altogether. And I find it wild that you got your first job in IT from a Google Craigslist ad. That is just crazy. But but yeah, it seems like you just you stumbled into IT, and once you got in, it's like, oh man, this is it. Like, starting off, and I try to tell. I knew, so for me, I was not techie at all. When I was in high school, when I was growing up, and that so just to date myself, we had a VCR. I don't even think we had in our house a DVD player until after I'd already joined the army. But I remember we had just gotten a family computer. It was a compact Presario. And I don't even think Compaq even is in business anymore. They might be doing something else. But we had a family computer, and then back then you would have to connect to a dial-up modem in order to connect to the internet. So it's like so the extent of me doing anything with the computer was just me logging in long enough to do maybe some research for a high school project or book report. But other than that, it wasn't like that wasn't something that kind of drew me. I wasn't like taking apart our VCR or anything like that. And so when I joined the army, it was because like the recruiter just happened to uh, spark my interest with like, oh yeah, the army's going to pay for your college, and the army's going it can give you a skill and a trade, because I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And I knew if I did end up going to college that I was going to spend money to figure things out, and I knew that was an expensive way to try to discover what I wanted to do, what I felt like my career path was going to be. Right. So again, like I find it interesting that like again, like when you went back to college with the newfound level of familiarity with and exposure to IT, now you go back and at one point where pursuing a business degree was a struggle. You come back and you're doing an IT degree information technology related degree, and it didn't even feel like work to you. So again, I think that's an amazing uh, perspective to have, and to kind of share. Like, uh, forgot somebody said that there's a the best work that you can do is work that just doesn't feel like work. And like, hey, like
Yeah.
you're doing the best job to have is one that doesn't feel like work. So it sounds like you found that in IT for sure.
Yeah, and it's with your military background, I think this will resonate with you and a lot of your listeners. Is um, we don't rise to the level of our goals; we fall to the level of our systems.
Mm,
Right? We can
yeah.
make a goal to go to college, but if we don't have the integrity, the respect, the organizational skills that the military has taught us, or outside of the military, our personal lives have taught us, um, we're only going to fall to our systems. So that really helped me, um, get back at that time in my life, and we were having a baby, and it was the perfect time to go back to college, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think I
Uh,
could have done it if it wasn't for my wife and what the military taught me.
yeah, that's I think that was one of the biggest things that the military provided me, is just like because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, it gave me a system, right? It's like, hey, like we're going to give you, you don't even have to make a decision about what you're going to wear. We got your
Yeah.
workout clothes, you got your work clothes, we got even like your formal event clothes. We're going to take care of that. We're going to
Yep.
take care of all your travel, your housing, your training. We're going to structure your day, and then we're going to give somebody in a supervisory position in charge of you, and then they can help develop you even further beyond your initial training. And that it because I didn't know what I wanted to do, it was the best thing for me. And you mentioned how that helped you, and I love that even with the challenge of having a new family and having a child that you went back because I didn't even get my degree until I retired in 2021 with and mind you, I remember I joined because the recruiter was like, hey, the Army is going to help you get a degree. And I signed on for a 5-year contract initially, and I was active duty. And I'm like, all right, cool. Like, yeah, that'll give you enough time. You can go to school online and Army will pay for it. And then lo and behold, in 2001 is when I joined. I didn't get my degree until 2020. Again, life happens, family happens, um, but the fact that your wife was able to support you, and in the midst of having a newborn child, again, that's not an easy decision to on top of trying to provide for the family, but now like having to commit that amount of time to pursuing a degree. I know that was a tough decision, but it's again a testament to your wife that she was able to support you in that journey. And in the military, they always say that the Army, well, the military first, Army first, but then family is second to none. At least that's what we were told. And so what they wanted to communicate is like, hey, like we are going to support you, and we're going to support your family because we know they're making a sacrifice just like you're making a sacrifice to serve your country.
Yeah, I want to touch on something that you said. The military taught us, what to wear, when to wear it, how to
Mm-hmm.
walk, when to walk.
Yep.
And kind of looking back, it wasn't so much about the singularity, it was more about focusing on what matters and letting
Right.
everything else fall apart or fall to the side rather.
Yep.
Um, and I think that was one of the things that really helped me. There's a lot of noise and a lot of chaos in life, and the
Mm-hmm.
ability in that time in my life and moving forward is what's important, right? Is your family, college, and everything else can wait. Um, I think too often I try to take on too much
Mm-hmm.
and try to do it all, and I got to remind myself that hey, we're human, can't do it all.
Yep, yep. That's another thing that again, that's a uh, I like that you mentioned that just having focus and the recognition that you can't do it all. I think you get the once you start having to fend for like provide for a family, you feel like sometimes like everything is on your shoulders, or and that you gotta go above and beyond, or again all of it comes with sacrifices of sleep and sacrifices of even personal ambitions. um but I think it's real key, again, like you said, it's just having the ability to focus and prioritize what's really important. And a lot of times I have to remind myself that my I can't be so focused on income generating activities and work that and convince myself that I'm doing this for my family, but I'm spending so much time in those activities that I'm missing my family. And
Mhm.
like one of those things that like I deployed a few times, and even while I wasn't deployed, the military or job just we did business trips in the military as well, to where you weren't deployed, but you'd have to go for a couple weeks, a few weeks at a time somewhere else. And I remember we were in Hawaii of all places, and you would think like, oh man, you get stationed in Hawaii and you have all of this, like just this beautiful island, perfect climate, every like temperatures between like 70 and like 85 year round. Like I can't even remember wearing like socks except to work because I was in the Army. But and I definitely didn't wear a jacket the entire time I was there. And but like I remember I spent 3 years there, but I didn't get to enjoy much of the island because I
Yeah.
was always working or doing something. And that was also when I was trying to make a real hard push to finish my degree. And at one point, my wife said, she's like, "Look, like you might as well be deployed because we don't see you. Like I'm up, like I get up at 5 o'clock, and I'd be out the door, and then I come back and it's already dark. It's 7, 8 o'clock. Kids are already hitting the bed, and I've missed an entire day, and then it was like that Monday through Friday, and then not to mention when I'm on the work trip. So that really stuck with me, and once we moved and got to our final spot where my last duty station in Georgia, I decided to retire because I wanted to get that time back and be able to focus and prioritize my family. Military was one of the best decisions I made, but at the same time, um, I had to make sure that my priorities were that my priorities knew that they were my priority.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the perfect way of putting it. That was my one of my top reasons of leaving as well. There's a lot of people that are do 20 plus years and they're successful in everything that they do, including family. But I can't tell you how many times that I missed an important event or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, FaceTime or pictures or whatever don't substitute the real thing. And I like having some sort of idea going in my day. We carve out meetings. We carve out by the hour, half hour. Everybody does it, and I think it provides some transparency to our day. And part of that is I carve out, from 5 o'clock, I'm out, and then back at 8 o'clock after my kids are in sleep, and that's non-negotiable time, right? And sure, stuff comes up once in a while,
Right. Yeah.
out of
Yeah.
town business trip or whatever it is, but I think that's helped a lot, um, on both sides, right? And I really really like that setup.
Yeah, yeah, just the intentionality that comes, especially, as a business owner and somebody that is, in senior level positions in an organization, it's easy to just kind of get so focused in on those activities that you miss the family. And so it is reassuring that just to hear somebody that has again been intentional about setting aside that time and making it predictable to where your family knows, like, hey, we know we're a priority and we know when dad is going to be here, and the things that we're going to be doing. I think that's that's commendable, and I think that needs to be normalized. I think a lot of the stress and heartache, and when people have challenges with stress and stress related health conditions. A lot of that is due to just this focus and this this getting so captured in work that we don't take time to experience love and be there to actually show love in a tangible way to our families. So again, kudos to you for being intentional in that aspect. um, I want to now, you had an interesting journey because so this is the like when I think of Google and Dell, like these are, Dell's a Fortune, like 35 company, and Google's a Fortune 5 company. And combining that with your experience with the military and experience in the private sector, like how did your experience with Dell and Google, where like these are, again, Fortune 50 companies, and how did that help when you went and decided to join the Army National Guard and do IT there? Like, how did your experience with Dell and Google help contribute to that, your success as a National Guardsman?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think with Dell and Google, they they had such a mature organization when it came to, um, structuring data and being
Okay.
organized. So whether it was reporting or, document management or time off, PTO or whatever it is, these organizations uh, have been doing it so well before I got there, and I'm sure they're doing way better now. Um, Going in the army, right? You can profess to this. It's structured chaos. It's
Yeah.
it's trial by fire. Hurry up and wait. You know, it's chaos, man. And it was interesting knowing that it doesn't always have to be that way. So when we got into the thick of it, um, I took some of the things that I learned from Dell and Google, staying organized, having everyone on the same page, having everyone reading the same page. I think that was some pretty great things that I was able to take away from those organizations, as well as the people, man. Google in particular, everyone you meet is so welcoming, um, and just so happy to help you learn, whether it be Google or anything else. And that's something I really took away too, is you never know who you're talking to or what they might actually need, but just always be there to help. Because you never know what they're going through, right?
Yeah, no, that's you hit on organization and structure um with Dell and Google. And I mean, you would expect that, and then but like the army is like we've had a army in this country for a couple hundred years, right? So it's this should you would think that things would be a little bit more organized in some spaces, but really like a lot of times like you're trying to figure out solutions to supporting your like our clients like I did IT in the army, and our clients are the people that are actually on the systems. They're the ones that are using the computers. They're the ones that are doing other jobs that require technology in order to do their job. But what you find like you like there's just some chaos, like there's just there's throwing stuff in which everybody's saving stuff to their desktop, and then or sharing user accounts or something like that because they don't have a centralized place to store data. So again, I thought it was fascinating that you took some of those things where Dell and Google are organizations that haven't been around as long as the army or the military, but you were able to take what they found success at, and again, structuring data. And then bringing that into the what your experience and how you were able to provide or help support solutions that brought that into or introduced that to the organizations that you supported within the Army. So I thought that was extremely fascinating. But again, I saw it firsthand. But outside looking in, it's like you would think like, oh well, everything's all structured and together. Well, some parts of it are structured, but when it comes down to doing work and the way that we make those things happen sometimes are a little messy.
Yeah, but somehow we always, figure it out, and we persevere out in the field with little to no instructions sometimes, but we make it happen. You mentioned saving things to your desktop, and you don't know how many companies do that. I'm sure there's some listeners on here that are closing out of this podcast as we speak because, oh no, they caught me, I'm saving stuff to my desktop, right? Or saving stuff to Outlook, right? Outlook is not a file repository.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But really the main driver takeaway from there is when it comes to business continuity and collaboration, right? If you have an employee that's saving files to a desktop, or they're emailing files between coworkers, there's a lot of unseen waste happening there and a lot of issues with business continuity as well. So just on the collaboration front, every single time that employee is sending that document back and forth, updating that document, they're getting that email, they download the file, they open the file, they edit the file, then they send it back, right? And this is not even a locally saved document. This might be a document on a file server, but it's still the same process. They're manually opening that document, editing, closing out, letting the other person know that it's updated. Um, there's some huge advances with Microsoft 365 or Google Drive is a great alternative as well, where you can co-collaborate on the same document. There's no saving, right? It auto saves with features, um, and or history changes rather, where you can roll back that document. Um, but also on business continuity, imagine a PC. It's a 3 or 4 year old PC, and it hosts your accounting software. I've seen this before, and there's no backups, and that accounting software crashes, and that PC crashes with it, right?
Right. Yeah.
What happens? Like, think about your your programs, your documents. Where is it located, and what's the cost to recover that? Is it days? Is it weeks? What is my impact to my business when it comes to that stuff? um,
Yeah.
it's really important to have that exercise.
Yeah. And the with this, like all I hear is just like these single points of failure, right? To where like if one thing happens to one thing, and then that shuts down operations, or makes it significantly difficult to get back to doing what it is that your business does to generate income, right? And so like business continuity, I'm glad look at like you would think it's a little bit less common nowadays with all of the software and all of the different resources that are out there. But you're like, hey, sometimes people, um, like if you get used to doing one thing, like hey, like as a person, like if I'm at home, especially like now that we're more remote work is becoming more commonly implemented, to where like hey, I'm leveraging this on my home computer, and then so like hey, like you just get used to you hit the save as button, and then it automatically defaults to something on your computer, and then you just keep doing that, and then oh well, at the end of the day I'll go and upload it to wherever it is. But um if you've gotten so used to that, and your business is transitioning from having something that's like a local solution to something more collaborative, to where you can have that in the cloud and have a shared document or have a shared file repo, um, the ability to be able to understand that and then move towards that is something that is it's like a you got to make that transition. Is sometimes it's hard because it's like the easy, like you get built that muscle memory of doing that. But like you said, like if you're hosting something on your computer and now that goes down, if you haven't thought about what would happen if that were to happen, and then B, set up some sort of backup system to where like okay, if you want to do that, like hey, have that auto save somewhere else, or at the end of the day it'll automatically go and save. You can like at the basic level you can set up little jobs to where it'll go and copy stuff over. But having these discussions with business owners on the front end, and I always equate it to just this challenge from like hey, I get really good at doing what it is that my company does, and most times it is not IT. A lot of times this is just I have a widget that I create, and we are really good at manufacturing this widget. And but as your business grows and you start generating a lot more revenue for your widget, the natural money goes into how do we continue to make more and more of these widgets, and then these systems that are this machinery or whatever it is that's making this is run by IT, but you're just running and producing, and that one system is really really good and it does what it can. But like whenever that system has to get brought down for maintenance, or if that system goes down for whatever reason, now business is not producing money. And if we haven't thought about all of the IT and all the continuity, and all, like, if an incident happens, if there's a disaster that happens, if this site, like, what do we like, if everything is physically located here, how do we then, if there's a tornado, a flood, a fire, to where this physical site is no longer accessible, how do we continue operations? How do we maintain business continuity? Like our site can even be a single point of failure, right? So no, I'm glad you brought that up, because again, like just I think these are the conversations and the things and uh, the nuances to running a business, especially as you're getting started, that need to be more front of mind as we start investing in making more widgets. We also need to invest in our infrastructure to support, multiple ways. Like, hey, if this goes down, I have an alternate means of being able to produce this function, right? So again, glad you brought that up and brought that to light.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that top level number grow, right? As a new business owner, or even a few
Hmm.
years in, or a decade in, it's exciting to see that needle being pushed. Um, and nobody wants to hear that I need to take money away from that and spend it on boring IT stuff. But I'll tell
Hmm.
you, you've seen it firsthand too. It's not if, it's when. It's
Right.
it's
Yep, that
not
part.
if anymore. It's when. I've helped so many companies, unfortunately, recover from ransomware or data
Hmm.
loss,
Yeah.
where we had an offsite backup that saved it all, right? And they just implemented that offsite backup last week.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
or it was going to be a $500,000 ransomware payment. And I
Yeah.
don't care how big of a company you are, that's a chunk of change.
For
Um,
sure. Yeah.
so you mentioned when that widget grows, what needs to go wrong with it. And I don't know about you, but I like buckets. In my mind, I like buckets. And the two buckets that I put IT in is business productivity and business continuity. So business productivity is helping that top line grow, and business continuity is making sure that that top line doesn't go down. So uh, really, backups are so important, and that's really business continuity, is making sure your business can keep going and keeping that line where it's at or higher. But there's some really cool things in the business productivity space, and really that's where I get most excited helping companies grow, is pushing that top line even higher, like our collaboration stuff, and automating business processes, and really helping drive that revenue. That's really where I get really excited.
Yeah. And I think just to back into this, I wanted to talk about some of your experience as a consultant, right? Because as you progressed, you came back and you got your degree in IT, or information and communications, and then you go into the private sector, and then you start progressing and become um, a senior leader in the organization, right? A senior practice manager and a lead in the engineering side, and providing these IT solutions. And so what were you able to learn and implement while you were in those senior positions that help you identify appropriate solutions for business owners as it relates to, like, hey, how can we incorporate and integrate these types of solutions into business where it makes sense for that organization to be able to okay, I get it, because it's one thing to have all of the technology and all the capabilities, but being able to translate like you did. Again, you talked about those two buckets, like, hey, here's business productivity, here's business continuity. A lot of times you mentioned making that purchase for IT doesn't always translate. It more translates to, like, hey, how do I generate more sales? And a lot of, like, hey, I get a sales and a marketing team, or I get a software solution to where I buy it, but I don't know how to properly implement it. So
Yep.
can you talk about how your experience in the private sector as a senior technology consultant has helped you conceptualize some of these solutions and be able to package those in a way that helps business leaders implement them in their own businesses?
That's a really good question. So one of the books that you and I talked about, I think fits perfectly here, is E-Myth Revisited, right?
Yep.
Is everybody's if you're an engineer, you're a technician, and you know your craft really, really well, whether that's Windows servers or backups or whatever it is, um, you're really good at that thing. And this book helped me step not step out of it, but step in a third person view to see, okay, as a business, how do we need to make this widget or this thing we do translate to the client, and so they can understand why we need X, Y, and Z. Too often, I've seen engineers saying, "Hey, we need to upgrade a server," and the business owner's like, "Okay, great. Why?" right? We
Right.
need to spend 10 grand on this widget. And I think it's just as a valuable skill to have a conversation with somebody and say, this is why. Um, and people respond when they know you, they like you, and they trust you. And having that relationship, and as a foundation to be able to explain why we need to spend this $10,000, is so important. I think that was one of the skills that I really took away from being in that senior leadership engineering space, was having those conversations, and realize there's something going on bigger than just my purview of migrating a file server, right? It's why, and be
Yeah.
able to explain that to a client, right, is just as important, because they're ultimately the ones cutting the check, and they need to know why.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great approach, right? So, like, number one, you talked about, building that know, like, and trust. A lot of times, you have because it, what we do in the technology space is very, very technical. It is very, like, down. It can be down into the weeds, understanding
We're
how
super
to.
nerds, man. We're super
Yeah,
nerds.
I mean, it's nerdy,
Yeah.
geeky stuff that is like, and it's its own language sometimes. And when we communicate in that language to business leaders who are speaking, hey, I know business, and I know business operations and what drives the needle forward with producing income for the organization. But when you come to me with ones and zeros, or you come to me with the exchange server needs to get upgraded and migrate to cloud, and like they
Yeah.
don't like, but why, but being able to speak the language, and just like when you go to a different country, if you're able to, as a foreigner, speak the language, it sits better with people, and people are, the indigenous people of that country are more likely to help you because you've made an effort to speak their language. A lot of times as Americans, we just, oh, the whole world speaks English, so like we just go and we don't even try to learn the language, and it creates this barrier, like, hey, like, we don't want to try to speak their language. So I think in the same thing from an IT perspective, being able to translate IT geek nerd speak into, this is what this technology does for the business, right? You want to be able to produce X, Y, and Z. This system helps, and this is the driving force behind being able to produce X, Y, and Z. So if this goes down, or it's operating at what we would say, like, hey, this, we're at about, this revenue, like, hey, we can probably increase revenue by 20 to 30% by like having two servers, to where, hey, when we bring this down for maintenance, we're not losing money because we have an alternate solution, a backup server that we can stand up and have the same functionality and continue to process and produce our products and services while that system has been brought down for maintenance. And being able to communicate that builds that know, like, and trust. Where, like, hey, you're not just trying to buy the latest and greatest IT solution, and spending money willy nilly. Like, again, like, well, that I'm buying IT, or like you mentioned, um, purchasing a backup solution. Well, until you need the backup solution, nobody really sees that. Like, it's not an ROI until it's actually needed. So,
Right.
fortunately, you had that client. It was within a week they saw that, but a lot of companies, it'll be like years before they experience their first challenge where they have to go and recover for a backup. So being able to communicate ROI, to where that ROI is really seen, maybe years from now, that's
Yeah.
hard to be able to communicate the need to do it. Well, why do we need to buy it now? But again, like, just being able to understand what the actual impact is on the business, and then being able to communicate why what your recommendation is helps and supports those two buckets you talked about: business productivity, business continuity. If you're able to translate that, you're in a lot better space as a technology professional.
Well, you mentioned ROI, and I think that's so important, is because backups are a delayed ROI, right? Until
Yeah,
it's a problem, like you said.
100%.
I think you would agree. I've never met a business owner that has regretted implementing backups after disaster strikes.
Right.
Never. When we're talking, return to business, when it takes days or weeks or months to get back to where you were, companies have gone out of business for far less. And
Yep.
I, I encourage anybody that's going in the IT field to stay away from scare tactics because
Mhm.
it doesn't help anybody. But when you can translate real life scenarios, and that just comes through experience, right? Real life scenarios saying, I've seen X, Y, and Z happen. I don't want it to happen to you. Um, and I think you said uh, geek speak, right? That's not something learned overnight either. Like you need to really understand the geek speak language to be able to translate it to, English or whatever your primary language is to be able to relay that information.
Yep. Yeah.
Takes time.
Yeah. Scare. Yeah. Staying away from scare tech, because what we do is there is a method called like fear and uncertainty, or fear, uncertainty, and doom or destruction, fear, uncertainty, and destruction, or something like that, as a scare tactic.
Yeah.
And like and this goes into like human psychology. Like there's an old adage, like a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still,
Mm.
which means if you try to force somebody into a change or scare somebody into the change, you haven't really changed their mindset around it. You've just kind of forced their hand. And at the first opportunity for them to go back and revert to the way things were, they're going to go and do that. We start talking like my specialty is cybersecurity, and more specifically governance, risk, and compliance. One aspect of that is building a culture of security awareness, right? And so
Mm.
this is where not only are the security practitioners that you've hired maybe as a consultant, to come to an organization and say, oh yeah, we've identified these risk areas and we recommend implementing these certain things. um, if the culture doesn't change, it doesn't matter what you implement. You're going to have people that are still clicking on phishing emails that are, seasonal, to where now we're coming up, oh, uh, 80% off Memorial Day sale, click this link to get your coupon, right? So this comes in and, somebody, oh, snap, like, 80% off a new grill. Like, yeah, sign me up, bro. Like when the culture doesn't change, or when you do set up that backup, but then they're just like, oh, well, they turn off the job, like, oh well, I don't want to have to come in on the weekend, so like, hey, we're just not going to run it this week or whatever. Like you buy these solutions and then nobody keeps them implemented, or the mindset never changes. um, this is where again your scare tactics aren't effective. But when you use real world scenarios to where the light bulb comes on, like, oh, that's a company that's just like us. And especially when we start talking small mid-sized businesses, where a lot of the thought process may be like, we're too small for anybody to target us with ransomware. We're too small for somebody to try to break into our organization, right? Our we don't make enough money for anybody to be, even like, for us to be on anybody's radar. Well, like, the threat actors, they're just scanning the internet looking for soft targets and vulnerabilities that are out there. And so like whatever you have this internet vesting and they find the vulnerability, they're going to just, they don't see this is Google, or they don't see that. They're not necessarily targeting those. It's just like, hey, who's an easy target that doesn't have certain things implemented? And so like, but when you're able to communicate real world scenarios to where, again, like, there are small businesses all the time, and a lot of times threat actors may target a smaller organization if they know that you are providing services to a larger organization. It's like, oh,
Oh,
that
that's
might be
great.
a way for me to get into your organization, and then those APIs that you have connected to them, the information that you're sharing with that, like, hey, they're able to get access to that by using your small business as the initial uh, avenue to get to that larger, that bigger fish. So again, using real world scenarios where, like, hey, look at this, small business that was impacted, but they usually start off with, you know, uh, change healthcare experience a breach, and really like they had a service provider that actually got breached,
Mhm.
and then now they're compromised, right? So again, I thought it was very insightful for you to bring up that portion of it, just like, hey, let's stay away from scare tactics, use real world scenarios so that they can understand how this, when we make this change, when we integrate this new technology, when we implement this new collaboration project, this is how it's going to benefit you, and then this is what it's going to avoid in the future.
Yeah, and you brought up a really good point about news. And if Google, I like this thought exercise. If Google got compromised, right, and every Gmail account on Earth got hacked, and you got locked out, that would make like national news, right?
Yep.
Absolutely national news.
Easy. Yep.
But if Joe's Mechanics in Michigan got hacked, right, a mechanic shop, that's not going to make news. That's not going to make local news.
Right.
So the what actually is happening is 75% of attacks are on small medium businesses.
Hmm.
That's what's actually happening. And guess what? If that business owner gets a $500,000 ransomware attack, they're not going to go to the news, right? They might have to pay it or negotiate it. Um, Another great statistic is last year, I think the average attack cost small medium businesses about $180,000. So something I encourage anybody to look into is cybersecurity insurance. It's affordable. In the event you do get a ransomware attack, it'll help supplement a lot of that cost. They'll help negotiate terms as well on your behalf. Um, and yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's easy for us to like, so like, because we've been, just like, you get a car, you get car insurance. You buy a house, you get homeowners insurance. Even as a renter, you get renters insurance, and all those are just the no brainers. You don't even think about it. You pay whatever that is that you qualify for, and that is appropriate for the stuff that you're trying to protect. And we don't have that same level of like that thought process doesn't run the same when it comes to protecting. You get business insurance, number one, and then cyber insurance to protect, because those business policies are all about just like, hey, what is the like how do we protect, like this liability, and like it's things that are more focused on like, or like, how do I protect if the CEO, I'm the CEO and head chef at this food truck, and that is the business. If I go down, then like, how am I going to pay the other two workers that are there helping me? Like, hey, that provides for um uh, re- uh provides an ability to provide funds for the people that are working for you, if the key leader of the business goes down. But on the same, like, but cyber insurance is like, well, we'll just restore from backup and we're good. Like, well, what if they're encrypted?
Mhm.
What if you have to replace all of your hardware because, hey, it is corrupted, and whatever incident response provider or whatever the recommendations are, like, hey, like, that's corrupted, we're not recovering that, you need to buy new equipment. How are you going to pay for that, right? Where are those funds coming from? This is where cyber insurance comes into play. And the recollection that 75% of attacks that have happened on businesses have been on the small mid-sized business sector, then that should send off the alarm bells, like, hey, how do we then protect ourselves? Because uh, Google and Meta and all these large organizations get fined all of the time for how they have implemented, poor privacy practices, or they're like selling data, haven't protected personal information. And so, GDPR, especially in Europe, they find that out, they're finding, and this in the hundreds of $1 million in fines. And they're just like, all right, cool, we'll pay it. Or they get hit with ransomware, and like, oh, it's a few $1 million, and they pay that, and then it's all right, cool. That was in the budget. We make billions of dollars
Yeah.
um, annually. And
It's a
but
write-off.
yeah, it's a write-off. We like business expense, we already calculated that we're going to spend, $70 million in, insurance related payouts for whatever. But a small business like that, like having a $100,000, $180,000 hit when your revenue is maybe that much, and you still have to then pay your employees out of that. You still have to, purchase, or you have to pay for the rent in the facility that you're renting. You still have to buy materials for the products you're generating. Like, most small businesses don't just have that laying around somewhere to where they can just pay a ransom and get back up and operational, right? So,
Yep.
yeah, having that as a business necessity needs to be more commonplace than it is. So again, that's an excellent insight that you brought up about cyber insurance.
Yeah, man. I was just talking with someone last week Thursday, and about a year and a half ago, they had a ransomware event. It was a $500,000, and they negotiated it down to, I think it was 100 or 150,000. Um, and we're talking like big numbers, right? Millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm sure your listeners are all over the place. Um, though security and expensive shouldn't always be in the same room, right?
Hmm.
It to implement base level security in your organization um, can be affordable, right? Like if you, we always will, I'm sure you know, like security in depth, right? You can go,
Yep.
you know, at a certain point, you might have, you know, uh, this doesn't equate to this, right? More money
Hmm.
doesn't equate to more security.
Right.
But
Yep.
what most people don't understand is initially you get a huge ROI on a little bit of investment in security, and then it trails off, right? Just implementing like multi-factor authentication, massive. Microsoft 365, hosting your data and your security and your email. Microsoft spends $1 billion a year on security alone. That's more than you and I put together can afford, my man.
Right.
So
Yep.
using tools that are available, that are built into a lot of the products that people already own, it's just flipping a switch and getting people onboarded um, can make organizations way more secure.
Yeah, I mean, it's basic cyber hygiene.
Yeah.
It's like we don't have to have the latest and greatest whiz bang, cybersecurity provider come in and create this implement this identity, like this um, network security. We call it like managed detection and response, and all that stuff is great, and it's recommended when you get to a certain level and you can afford that. But like simple things like you mentioned, multi-factor authentication, that's just a setting. Like this just you go and turn on multi-factor authentication for my M365 that I'm already paying for. Like, but I just don't want the inconvenience of having to pull out my phone and download the app and then have it not only me memorize my username and password, but also have to go and have a code sent to my phone. Like it's inconvenient, but that's a basic thing to where even if your username and password are somehow compromised, you got another like a second chance to where that threat actor does not have your phone and they don't have your Microsoft Authenticator app sending them a 6-digit code to let them know what to do, right? Like how to get in. It, but yeah, it's just some basic things, again, just not having a sharing the same password across multiple accounts. Some of just basic things like that will make yourself like go back to like being a hard target to threat actors if they have to try extra hard to try to get into your account, or just like try to figure out what your username password is, try to get access to your organization. They're just going to go find, because there are plenty other small mid-sized businesses, even some larger organizations that aren't implementing those same thing, and that's just easy. Like they're running scripts, and then whatever pops is what they're going to go after. So if you don't, whatever you're doing does not pop on their initial script, like hey, they got their MFA, like we're not going to bother them. We're going to move on to something else. So I think that's a great point. And like while we're on that, like so one of the things that focused systems helps small mid-sized businesses do when we look at, cloud and identity access management, um, implementing the proper security and then the right configurations in those environments is key as well. Especially when, like, hey, we most businesses now are looking at, like, hey, instead of me maintaining a, on-prem server farm, or a network, a server room where it has all these Dell servers, and then I got to pay somebody to come in, and I got to make sure the room is all cooled and locked up and all of that. Like, if I just move all this stuff into the cloud, and let AWS or Google or Microsoft be the solution to that problem, like, yeah, I'll just use Azure, and then we'll roll up virtual instances, or we'll just manage all of our access through the cloud. And so instead of me maintaining my own solution, or maintaining my own passwords and my own staff to do that, a lot of that now gets pushed up into the cloud, to where now my access and my authentication is happening there. Can you talk to how important it is for businesses to look at how they are leveraging cloud and doing identity management with their cloud access?
Yeah, really great question. So I think there's a couple parts here that I want to hit on. First off, cloud may not always be the right option, right? So we come in with an open mind and understand an owner's goals and his pain points, and what he really wants out of his technology. Um, whether that be ROI or automation, or hey, just keep that thing on in the closet and let it do its thing, right?
Yeah.
Where are you at in your journey, and how can we help complement that? What I will say is, a lot of those dark closets in the corner that host the ones and zeros, um, is it hasn't been touched in years, and it's been kind of siloed, uh, where in the past it was always on-prem, and there hasn't been really a difference in opinion, because there hasn't been another solution provided, or another option provided to that business owner. Excuse me. What I can say is, a lot of people are seeing a lot of success moving some of those workloads to Azure. Mind you, there's some software that doesn't run well in Azure, right? There's some files that don't run well in Azure. So it's getting a holistic approach to your environment, understanding where your data is, where your applications live, who's accessing it, and from where, and then making an educated conversation around, hey, we can have some ROI instead of replacing the server. Well, we're going to put that workload into Azure. It's just a monthly subscription cost,
Hmm.
uh, and there's no big capex request, every few years to refresh that. You get
Right.
um,
Right.
the line goes like this every month, on that workload. And I think that really resonates with business owners. They like that idea of the Netflix model, just host something great and easy to use, and there's less support costs. But again, that might not fit every business, right? They might want to host their stuff on prem. They're extremely conscientious of where their data is hosted. Um, what I will say is, in some of those scenarios, like I said, Microsoft invests $1 billion a year in security.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
what a lot of people don't realize is, just because your data is on prem, meaning in your company in that closet, doesn't make it more secure. It doesn't. It
Right.
can, it can with the right proper security environment, but it doesn't by default. And I think that's a big disconnect for business owners, because they think, if I can see my data, it's more safe. Well, that data
Yeah.
is not, it's not physical, right? It's
Hmm.
not the sense where someone can just physically walk off with your data anymore, right? It's on the cloud. People have permissions all over the internet. Um, is MFA introduced on that data, right? So it's not always a clear cut answer anymore of, is my data more safe in my building or with Microsoft? So we really like having those conversations with the business owners, and listen to their issues, help with education, and then together make an informed decision on where do they want their business IT to be today, next month, next year? Yeah.
Yeah. So figuring out a right size solution, like
Yeah.
what works best. So it's not a one size fits all. Um, gotcha. Okay. Is so once we look at like we're looking at things like moving to the cloud. We look at what we can leverage from the cloud. You mentioned $1 billion in security that Microsoft is investing, so you get the um, at least from an infrastructure perspective, you move into the cloud. They're investing that. As part of that is physical security for the data centers. Part of that is how they're doing access management in um, their stacks and all of that, how it's getting um, secured on the front end just from a physical perspective. Um, Once we have then like say a organization has made that decision to start investing into the cloud a little bit more, are there any like emerging technologies besides the cloud that you think that small businesses should be on the lookout for that can also help them kind of optimize things in addition to either cloud or even just leveraging that if they're still working on prem, right? Like what emerging technology solutions, new breakthroughs that you're seeing out in the industry that you think small business owners should be aware of?
Yeah, great question. So AI and automation, they're both making a huge splash in IT, right? Is how can anybody, including small business owners, use AI uh, to increase sales, to uh, increase productivity, streamline processes, and then layering on automation on top of that, right? Does this report get sent out every Monday, right? In 30 seconds, you can create a workflow to just automate that. Um, or what are our meeting notes? You and me, will. What are our meeting notes from this meeting? Well,
Mm-hmm.
with AI, those can just be generated, and you don't have to have someone taking notes. It can be a natural conversation with everybody involved, so that person can be producing better and more efficient things, um, or just creating presentations, right, or Word documents. Uh, AI is getting pretty amazing where you can give the audio from this podcast, Will, and it'll generate a whole presentation about what we talked about, main
Yeah,
points, main objectives, instantly. And you might not get a perfect output, but it'll get you
it's a
80%
start
the way
point.
there. Yeah,
Mhm.
something. So those are some really cool things that companies a little bit more mature in their IT adventures are getting into. That's not going to be the first thing that we tackle right out of the box, but we love helping companies mature to that point where we can start looking at tools to help drive that top line revenue. And that's, like I said, that's really where we get really excited helping companies do that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I think if we can start looking at some of those emerging things like AI and automation just makes the job of one person that much more easy, right? It makes it easier, less things for them to manually do. And I think that's something that, again, as a small business, the more that you can do that, the more you're able to multiply yourself almost. Um,
And it's no
I,
longer a buzzword.
right.
It's no longer a buzzword. It's obtainable. It's relatively easy to implement depending on the scale of things. And it's happening, right? It's not some buzzword that you're reading about anymore. It's
Right.
being implemented on a basic to advanced level, and it's pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, yeah. I think just small business owners just need to be aware of it and not be afraid of it, right? Like there are some free
Yeah.
ways. There's some like I know Google and Harvard even has like some free training on just like, hey, here's an introductory into AI. Like here's how you can, kind of add this to what you're doing, right? So I think again, it's to our benefit. And I think really you're just going to get left behind by the people that are leveraging AI and automation to make things easy because they can go faster, farther with less personnel than you can if
Mhm.
you're just still doing things manual, right? So just again, it makes sense from a business perspective. Um,
And I
so
encourage people to like you said, get into it. It's not daunting, right? You can just start typing, hey, how do I write a better, paper, or how do I write a better business plan, or whatever
Yeah.
it is, and just see what comes back. And most people that I've talked to absolutely fall in love and have found a way to make their lives easier, that have cut down on hours every day and use those hours to help drive revenue and do more cool things, spend time with family.
Right. Yep.
So
Get back to those
definitely recommend.
priorities.
Yeah,
Yep.
man.
Oh, I love it. And again, I've seen that same type of like when I like again, I use AI to help make things easier, right? So like if I'm trying to draft a document, I know what I want that document to say. I can describe it. I put that in there, and it'll give me 80% solution. And then I go back in and I need to change that. Hey, I need to add this and give it more detail, right? But at least it saves me the time to have like manually type out every single word and put all the topics and subtopics and all of that, like that can all get kind of auto generated, and it just save you a lot of time in the long run. So that's how I like to use it. Is again, like I don't want to spend hours doing something to where just to get to a starting point, you can just use AI, leverage that, and then again spend that time elsewhere.
Yeah,
um
for sure.
so as we close out, I like to ask my guests a random, lighthearted question, just to kind of just help the audience know a little bit more about you as a person. And so I know you are a coffee drinker, right? I think so for me, I just started drinking coffee, maybe 2 years ago or something like that. Just to like for me, I have ADHD, and like coffee, like it's recommended to a lot of people that have ADHD to just help them kind of focus, right? So I started drinking coffee, but like I'm also cheap too. So me going to Starbucks wasn't kind of in the picture. But I just want to. I'd be curious when I hear people that are coffee drinkers. So the question is like, how do you drink your coffee? Is this something where you're in line at Starbucks every morning, or is this something where you got this special brew, this whole
Oh
kit that
man.
you have? So like, talk to me about how, like, what type of coffee drinker are you?
So for those who didn't know, Will reached out to me last night. And he's like, "I'm gonna have a surprise question for you," and here I am, just like worried as all heck. Right? I'm like, "What is this gonna be?" He's gonna surprise something on me. So that was very nice, Will. Easy question. So I love coffee, and my wife actually makes us coffee most of the time at home. She is an incredible barista. But if we do want to go out and have coffee, there's an awesome shop in Kakana, Wisconsin called Kakana Coffee and Tea, and
Okay.
Amy will make you the best caramel macchiato in the world. So uh, I keep it pretty easy. I did try yesterday. I did try the boba. I think I'm saying that right, from Starbucks.
Yeah.
Weird, different. It was an experience. I don't think I'll do it again, but it was well worth the one time.
Yeah, the bull. I think the first time I even like heard of that was in Hawaii, and we were just like there was a shop. And, I think it was coffee. It had like a little dessert drink, smoothies, all that, and they had the bulk. It's like somebody got it and is like, what is that stuff at the bottom of your cup? Like, what is that stuff? And like it looked weird, and it's like me like consistency, like the like
Yeah.
texture and all, like that's just weird. So I never got into that. So again, that's more of an acquired taste. I think my kids they like boba stuff, but yeah, just not for me. And like the extent of my coffee drinking is like we have a Keurig that like we had for years, and I never used it until again like I started drinking a couple years ago, and we just I'm so cheap. I just buy whatever. Like I think it's like the Folgers Black, I think it is. Um, and I pop it in there, and then I throw some creamer in there, and I call it a day. And I cannot like my brother, he drinks his coffee black, and
Mm,
I'm not there yet. It's just
I'm
you
not
got
there
to
yet.
be. you have to be so committed to just the end state, like,
Yeah.
but like he even enjoys it. I'm like, how is this possible? It takes like it just whenever I taste coffee without any type of creamer or like sweetener, like it just like I picture motor oil. Like I feel like
Yeah,
I'm
man.
drinking motor oil. I can't do it.
Do you think
Um,
it's an acquired taste?
I I think it is. I would hope people just don't start. That's just weird.
Right.
That's just weird to me. But I probably just alienated all my black coffee drinkers. Like, hey, I just give it to me black. Don't have any of that extra stuff. On the other extreme, my dad, like when he drinks coffee, it's just like he likes his cream with coffee. Like it is all this other stuff, and it's like a hint of brown. Like it's almost like khaki colored by the time he gets all his cream and all that stuff added to it. Like it's barely any coffee taste left over. He's been on this like lately he's been trying to try to expand his horizons, and he's just like that just it's just too much of a coffee taste for me. So yeah, more power to those that are able to drink coffee straight. I actually like for health reasons. Like I used to do intermittent fasting. Like the only way to actually do intermittent fasting and drink coffee while you're in the fasting stage is to drink it black. And I tried. I like I can't do it. I'll just wait. I'll just wait till my eating window and I'll just drink the coffee the way I want.
You know, you got some viewers though that are saying you got to try something else than black Folgers, right? You got to try some different beans. But I'm with you, man. I've tried it. I I like my sweeter drinks, espresso and macchiatos, and man, it's good stuff.
Yep, yep. I gotta stop being I'm cheap and I'm also like impatient. Like the Keurig just does it in like 12
Done.
seconds and it's
Right.
done.
Yep.
In order to do it right, be a labor of love, you got to put a little bit more thought and effort into it for sure. That's where your wife being the barista that she is, that's why you're getting a stellar product every time.
I'm spoiled. I am 100% spoiled. Yep.
Yeah. But all right, man. Hey, so this has been exceptionally informative, Blake. Definitely appreciate you jumping on the podcast and giving us insight and helping us glean from your experience. Uh, how can people find out more about you, find out more about what Focus Systems has to offer? Like, where can we go to connect with you?
Yeah. Yeah. If you check out focussystems.net, that has all information about who we are, what we do, and how we can help you on your IT journey.
Awesome. Yep. Definitely recommend everybody. He has every month, is it that you produce a article, a newsletter of sorts,
Yeah.
basically going over a particular topic in the tech field. And so absolutely a lot of value add there. If you go to focussystems.net, click on those tech articles. Then you'll be able to see those and get that ad. And then also he has a newsletter where you can get that stuff in your inbox, right? News alerts, all that, right? So go there, get more, and also like Focus Systems for the business owners. Definitely reach out so that he can help you, just like he talked about right sizing those solutions for his other clients. He can do the same for you. Don't be out there flapping, and have somebody that can kind of walk you through how to implement technology in your business the right way. So again, thank you, Blake, for being a part of the podcast. Um, this has been Will Reed with Tech in Motion. Be safe out there, implement tech, and then move forward with speed and profitability. Have a good one. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, Will. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
All right.